Hey guys, Sticks here, and welcome to Mythic Heroes. I really like this game. And for the first thing I'm ever going to do on YouTube for this game is I'm going to give you an overview of every single character, what I think about them, their power level, what they should be used for and in as a team, and what you should be putting on them. Just briefly, because there are a lot to cover. I'm going to try to keep this video nice and short for you. So, first off, who am I? What gives me the right to tell you to do anything in this game or to even give you any sort of advice whatsoever? Well, first off, uh, on my account, I have spent more than I'd like to admit. I am level 169 right now. My powers is sitting pretty at 160 million overall. And I am a part of the Resurgence guild system, the largest, most powerful, and most probably well-known guild system in the game. I'm part of Resurgence 5, which is it's this close to max level. So, yeah, I have my roster built up moderately well. And I'm still, of course, trying to work on it. But, yeah, I'm just keeping up the daily grind and wanted to give you guys my thoughts and opinions on things. So, I'm going to go to portraits, and I'm going to go through them one by one. I have enabled some of the newer pictures and portraits for some of these characters. If I do get age restricted, then screw YouTube, I guess. But basically, I'm gonna go through all of these. I'm going to say ahead of time, if you are not, as you can clearly see here, if you are not prepared or allowed, I guess, to see some interesting imagery, then I would suggest you turn away now before I get into it. But with all that out of the way, let's start from the top. So,
there is nowhere to hide from me.
First off, we have Lucifer. Now, let me make something very clear here. I have Lucifer built as my best character, period. I have put absolutely everything into this character, and I can tell you exactly what I think of him. He's good. He's pretty good. He is definitely not the best in the game. He's I don't know if I would even consider him close, but basically what he does is he is just a DPSer. He has a lot of dodge, and he can do a lot of AoE and stun. Really, for this character, you want to be putting like dark runes and the ultimate damage one that I can never remember the name of for the equipment. Hold on, let me give me just a second. I'm gonna go try to find that. The Sadarshana chakra, yes. So I'm just gonna call it the chakra. You should be putting a chakra on him more than likely, because the ultimate is where a good chunk of the damage comes from. Yeah, just a good fighter. Next,
Is there any worthy opponent here?
we have Marduk, who I believe to be very good. I'd actually maybe consider him to be better than Lucifer. When he's fully built up, he is almost impossible to kill. Like his ultimate can kill some people. His warlord form, Warlord Awakening here, just refuses to let him die. So as a tank, he works incredibly well. He does a lot of damage, and he can stay alive for absolutely ever. So he's fantastic for defensive teams. You probably want to be putting, I wouldn't say Dark. Dark probably isn't great for him. Probably something like, since he's a tank, like Earth Runes and one of the shields, or maybe a chakra as well, so that the ultimate will kill more. But yeah, moving on.
Keep eye contact, gentlemen.
Wow, what a line. Okay, I sit here. Again, good character. I don't know if I'd call her great at the moment. I mean, she does what she is designed to do, right? She heals and she revives. The only reviving character in the game. Her ultimate can delay battles quite a bit, so if you do put her on a defensive team, she does work pretty well. But honestly, putting her on an offensive team, I just don't think is worth it whatsoever. It's just not going to do enough for you in the long run, and if you are reviving a character when you have like 2 or 3 left because you're missing out on so much DPS or defense, then you're just losing anyway, right? So she's fine. Sometimes can be very good. I would recommend water runes and these names are screwing me over, man. The Magatama. Jeez, dude.
Spirit fawn is
Yeah, one of those. So that you can get her ultimate up more.
rising like the Nile in spring.
Next,
Darkness ends when I enter.
Amaterasu. I think she is pretty good normally. She is fantastic against bosses. Her ultimate is a single target. It increases its damage every time it's cast in a game, and it will be cast multiple times when you're fighting a boss, and it gets better and better every single time. And for that reason alone, I think she is one of, if not the best boss DPS in the game. Overall, she's a good mage. I don't know if I'd put her in any sort of PvP or PvE team offensively. Again, I really think she's just for boss clearing. But for that, she is quite good. And I guess it's kind of the same deal. You probably want to put Dark Runes and Chakra, which is interesting given she's the solar deity. But yeah, moving on.
Patience is bitter, but its fruit sweet.
Dangun here is an interesting one. So he's generally pretty new, fairly new, and from what I can tell, he's just too random to really do enough. If you're looking to actually play and try to win, it's really rough trying to get him to work because his ultimate can do one of like 5 things or 6 things, right? And you just are never able to tell which one it's going to be, and that makes him very inconsistent. So sometimes you'll win, sometimes you'll lose. That doesn't fly in PvP, right? In PvE, sure, you can get that god run and then you win, but in PvP, it's just not going to work. And I guess, yeah, he's decent for PvE. Of course, he can give damage boosts and whatnot. Like you can get the exact thing that you need at the exact time, and it's always a great feeling. But yeah, most of the time he's not doing it. Not for me, at least. And seeing as he's a support, again, you might want to do water. You might want to do, I suppose, light, and then again probably the Magatama on this guy. So moving on. Yeah, I'd probably consider him one of the best characters in the game. Typhon is bonkers. Like just actually so good as a tank. What he does, he buffs your entire team, gives himself inordinate amounts of defense, and then when when the shield that defense gives dies, it blows up, deals a bunch of damage, and then every time an ally dies, they turn into these snakes that do extra damage. He makes your team so hard to kill. Do not sleep on Typhon. He is actually so good. And as a tank, of course, you want to put Earth runes and Shield, of course. That just makes it even harder for him to kill. Like, or even harder to kill him. Like he gives himself so much defense, right? It's very worth it. I would recommend this on any defensive or offensive team, actually. Basically, if you have him at a decently high level, you should be using him. I replaced, I think, G&M with Typhon here. Didn't see any damage drop off. Like, just so good. Moving on.
Who will let me? No. Who will stop me?
Lilith is mid. I'm going to go ahead and say that. Yeah. She's fine. You can make her work, but she's just so squishy until she gets that ultimate off. And even then afterward, if you don't have the right amount of dodge and the right teleporting thing, she's going to die so fast. But when she does pop off that ultimate, sometimes it will deal so much damage. And that can come in super clutch in any game mode. She doesn't really have a strong suit in any specific game mode, but she's kind of okay for all of them. Seeing as she's a mage, so she's supposed to be a DPS, something like fire or lightning are good options. Dark is also decent, and you probably want to put a chakra on her as well, just so that ultimate does a bit more damage. Moving on.
Fight only to survive, and surely you'll die.
Oda Nobunga here is, from what I can tell, now this is the newest character in the game, right? So I don't have a very firm grasp, but from what I can tell, he is very, very good. Like, in the team with a maxed out Lucifer and a not maxed out Oda here, he did twice as much damage. Like, bonkers damage, right? So, like, he makes a copy of himself that's stronger than him, and then he does over twice the damage he would normally do as the character, and then just keeps going, and he doesn't like to die either. So very, very good. I'm actually considering swapping Lucifer for him in my offense team, much like I'm going to be replacing Lucifer with Marduk in my defense team. So seeing as he's a fighter, I think Dark is a great option given what his ultimate does, because it saps energy from himself, and if you can keep that up the entire game using Dark runes, that is 100% what you want to be doing. Chakra is completely useless here, as is the Magatama. I feel like for him, you probably want to go for something either defensive or tactical, as opposed to just straight up offense. So something like... what would be good on him? If you wanted to make him harder to kill, you could definitely use a shield. But I'm going to need to figure out more about this character before I can give my entire thesis, I suppose. Moving on.
Archaic powers are unhindered by any laws.
Nuwa. I think she is a very good support. She's definitely not a healer, but she does full team buffs, and she does them well. It's a little bit random, just depending on what happens, but usually if you build your team the right way and if you build around her, she can do quite a bit for you. I would probably recommend putting water ore or water runes and again probably a Magatama on her, just to make sure that ultimate keeps going off and keeps buffing your team, because I believe it is stackable. So if you cast it multiple times and they still have the effects, they get more. So yeah, definitely worth it if you want to go that direction.
Respect my divine will.
Zeus is fine. I mean, he's not great. He's, again, much like Lilith, he's very squishy until he gets that ult off, and even then, if it doesn't kill anyone, he's dead anyway, right? So he's kind of a one-shot wonder. If you don't have him built up enough, he's just not gonna win you games, and he just, most of the time, he just doesn't do enough. Right, like there are other better AoE damage dealers than him, and so that's why I think he's kind of okay. For him, you kind of want to do Dark or Fire. Lightning is a bit awkward with him, but I guess it kind of works. And then a Chakra is almost mandatory, because his ultimate by far does the most damage in his entire kit. So, moving on.
A sharpened spear and a sharpened mind.
Athena is very, very good. Athena was my first tank in the game, and she got me through so much of it. I didn't realize just how much she had done until I started building other characters and trying them out. She is actually so good, even moving into the late game. I eventually replaced her with Odin way later down the line, but that was just because I had enough survivability as is with Typhon and Idun, which I'll get to in just a minute here, but yeah, definitely worth it. Once you get her all built up, she heals, she gives you shields, and she's really hard to kill. You definitely want to go Earth and Shield for her. That's just the best build, period. Yeah, moving on.
My heart is refreshed after a good fight.
I am struggling to figure out how to pronounce the name on this one properly. I think it's Susanoo. But yeah, he is good, not great. A lot of people make him out to be better than he is, I think. Again, another squishy character, right? Like, he does a lot of damage with his ultimate. He does. He does a lot of damage, but if you don't get the ultimate off before you die, then he's just a completely useless and worthless character. And because he launches himself into battle right at the start, it's tough to work around that. So good, not great. Again, probably fire, lightning, maybe dark. And then a chakra is, again, almost mandatory for him because ultimate, bunch of damage. So moving on.
Both I and nature have no mercy.
Artemis is good. Again, much like Susanoo, she does a lot of damage with her ultimate. And once she pops it off, she can just go and outright kill an enemy. And then the battle turns in your favor. But if she doesn't kill that enemy, if she doesn't have enough damage, or if she gets killed beforehand, again, kind of a dead character. And for that reason, I think she's very similar to Susanoo in just power level. She's another fighter. And I think for her, I'd probably recommend like almost identical equipment to Susanoo. Just, chakra, dark, fire, something along the lines of just ultimate damage. So
My madness will cleanse your soul.
I think Dionysus is good. He slows down a bunch of enemies all at once, and that is very helpful when you want to just avoid what they're doing. And that's also the strong point of Odin, who we'll get to in a minute. But he buffs your team and slows down enemies. Oftentimes it's enough to do a lot of damage and or kill someone, which can definitely help and turn the battle to your favor. For him, I'd probably say something like light would actually work pretty well. As far as runes go, water is also good, and then probably the Magatama as well. I'm not entirely sure on that, but from what I can tell, that seems to be the base support kind of equipment. So, moving on.
We'll drink together after our victory.
Thor is okay. He doesn't like to die. I'll give him that. So as a tank, that works. But there are better tanks in the game, and he does no damage. Right, so if you just want someone that's going to stall for time and stay alive, like on a defensive team, this will work perfectly. Outside of that, you should not be using him as a DPS really at all. And yeah, as a tank, again, you'll probably want to go for that defensive build, which would be Earth Runes and a shield. It's just the best for these kind of defensive tank characters. So, moving on.
Oh, what a lovely day.
Western Queen is quite good. Not for herself. As a character herself, she is useless. But if you build up your highest DPS character to be your highest combat power character, so that your highest battle power character, then she will buff that character exclusively and buff it a lot. So I currently have, as you saw in the beginning, I have my Lucifer at the highest power level of all of my characters. And that means that every time we're in battle, she will buff Lucifer only. And she does a whole lot. She lets him get his ultimate off so often that I'm usually just able to take over a game in the mid to long stages of what is generally considered a high-level game. So definitely worth picking up if you want to have one main DPS on your team. I would probably recommend Water as well, and definitely Magatama, because that ultimate going off more is always a good thing. So, moving on.
There will be no truce with these foes.
Here's my boy Odin. Most of the game, until you get to a pretty dang high level, Odin is kind of okay. He stays alive pretty decently, but he just doesn't do really anything. Once you get to my level, he is very, very good. Some people in my Discord even called him mandatory once you get to the late game. Which I considered myself to be in the late game. So his ultimate can just stop opponents from using their ultimates for long enough for me to do enough damage to kill them outright so they can't stop me. And that is good enough on its own, specifically in PvP. But, sometimes in PvE and whatever. Terrible for boss fights. Don't use him for boss fights. But outside of that, he's just quite good for all content. Again, Earth Runes and a shield are just best here. He's another tank. you want him to stay alive long enough to get that ult off, and when you do, you usually win. So
The demons desecrate this realm. I am here in service.
we share a name, this angel and I. But yeah, Gabriel is kind of a weird kind of tactician character. She doesn't usually do enough from what I've seen. Like, I guess she can stop some damage from coming through, but most of what she does is just stop specific kinds of attacks from doing quite as much damage to your team, but that's only while she's alive. So you can easily get through with Susanoo or Loki or someone like that to just destroy that as it begins. And usually that damage decrease is not enough to warrant running her over any of the other support characters. And so I kind of find her to be okay from what I've seen. Even though she's not considered a support, I mean, she doesn't do damage really. So I want to say like something to keep her alive. So maybe light or earth or something like that. And then probably a Magatoma as well. Or yes. But yeah, she does some shield stuff, but yeah, I mean, I guess at that point you might want to do water, but it's kind of your choice with this character. I just don't really recommend running her anyway, but
The world literally revolves around me.
yeah, thanks Apollo. Okay, so Apollo is the second newest character. I haven't had a chance to play with him at all, but from what I've seen, he seems quite good. He really hates to die. Like, he makes a lot of shields. He doesn't do the most amount of damage, but he does enough damage to be on a team and not be dead weight. And he just stays alive for so long. As a fighter, I think he will work just fine in really any team. Maybe on a defense team, he might be a little better than an offense team, but whatever the case, you probably want to go... Well, I guess since he's a defensive and offensive character, you could go either fire or earth runes, and then you can choose either a shield or maybe a chakra, but I think more the Axe of Pengu is probably just the better option, but I don't know. We'd have to see. Moving on.
How beautiful are the blossoming roses of the dead.
That voice does not fit that that face. Okay, so Persephone, good, not great. Again, just dies pretty quickly and easily. She debuffs the entire enemy team. When she gets that ult off, she can do quite a bit. But usually, she's just kind of there, and then I can kill her, and then it's fine, and then I'm put in an advantage, right? So she's kind of okay. Doesn't do as much as I'd like, and that's why I don't have her built up at all. But I did in the beginning stages of the game. Didn't know what she did, and then that kind of screwed me a little bit in the beginning. Even though she's a mage, this is another kind of rough one. You either want to keep her alive or you want to buff your entire team, so you can use like Excalibur as the equipment, and then for runes you can kind of just do whatever you want. It's kind of freelance with her. Moving on.
The gate of hell is wide open, awaiting wandering souls.
For a while I thought people overvalued Izanami, but honestly, she's pretty dang good. Like, I mean, she got a buff recently. I say recently, it was like a few months ago, but she got a buff that I believe just increased her damage and lifesteal, and that was enough to have me see her again in top ranking arena battles. She does a good amount of damage. She really doesn't like dying when that ultimate is up, because she just saps the life out of all of your opponent's stuff, and then heals herself for all of it. And so I find that very good. And all in all, she's just a good DPS. Stays alive. I like what she does. I'm working on building her at some point. I'm currently working on Hela, but it's beside the point. As a mage, you probably want to go dark for her, because that ultimate going off more is always good. And then either chakra or Magatoma, but even then, like, I don't know if the Magatoma is actually necessary. If you just want more damage, definitely go chakra.
My kingdom will spread to this world.
Hades. again, he's fine. He's good. Uh, he can one-shot kill any low HP enemy with that scythe, which is pretty cool. And he has a summon that's a Hellhound, which can help in certain situations. Most of the time, he is another contender on a team that I fight. He doesn't usually do enough to actually kill any of my characters, but I think he's good enough in most scenarios. On a defensive team, I don't know if he's entirely worth it, because on a defense team, all you're trying to do is stay alive rather than killing enemies. But whatever the case, I think Earth Runes and a shield are best here if you're going to be using him.
Desire is the origin of sin.
Medusa is quite good, in my humble opinion. I don't know why she's a fighter. I don't really consider her that. But her ultimate just wins games. Like, you get that ultimate off, and then she freezes everybody. They take so much more damage. You have one AoE damage dealer pop their ult as well. Basically game over. Because I consider her more of a support than a fighter, I would probably recommend putting stuff on her to either keep her alive or to buff your team, very much like Persephone, so like an Excalibur, and then Earth Runes would work, I suppose. I'm not entirely sure how to build her, but I know she's very, very good, and I have her built up already, so.
I will weigh your heart against the feather of truth.
Oh boy. So Anubis is a hard counter for heroes like Loki. But other than that, he's just not good enough. He's just not. Like, all of his summons, there's a bunch of them, sure, but they die, right? Like, and then he's just open, just lying there, all sad. And so I don't think he's really worth it. The only time I ever use him personally is in the guild battle with the dragon, because the summons can actually redirect the ultimate of the dragon that would beam any of my characters to death to one of these, rather, which is decent. But I'm also working on the Shadow Arc faction as a whole. So as a tank, again, Earth and Shield is probably just best if you're going to be using him as well.
To bring Ragnarok.
Hela, she's the best Shadow Arc healer by far, because she's kind of the only one. And as a healer, she's pretty good. She can slow down enemies that get near to her, so she has some built-in protection. She heals your own guys, buffs them. She's just good overall. I don't think she's the best healer in the game, but I think she's definitely up there. And as a support, as a healer, you definitely want to be using Water Runes, definitely want to be using the Magatama. It's probably just best for your entire team if you were to do that, so.
Nothing created or destroyed.
Faust, the alchemist. I think he is actually quite good as well. I've seen him in very, very high level play, like even higher caliber than me for sure, where he just swaps places with an enemy, that ultimate pops off, and then weakens enemies so much that one more AoE attack can just kill them all, and then you just win, right? Like, he does so much damage with that ultimate. And yeah, he can throw some poison puddles and such, but again, as a support, you want to be, but he's a support, but you kind of want to be building him like a fighter. So you kind of want to have like either dark or fire runes, and then you definitely want to have a chakra on him, so just so that ultimate does enough damage to really destroy an enemy team.
I'll roll you in linen. Relax, I mean as a mummy.
Ah, Nephthys, the infamous, the reason this video is getting age restricted. Pretty new as well. I'm not entirely sure what she's supposed to be doing. She's kind of like Izanami, except I feel a little worse. Again, she kind of just does damage to a bunch of enemies, saps their life, and then that's it. I haven't been seeing her really at all in PvP or PvE content of other players, and so for that reason, I don't think she's all too great, even though she is new. I don't think she's worth it most of the time when Izanami is a clear other option that just will work better. But if you are going to build her, do it like the same exact way as Izanami, you know, chakra and the dark runes, or maybe fire, if you want to go that direction.
I prefer ambush, but any fight is just plain fun.
Loki is good. So there's an interesting thing about Loki. So first off, he does a lot of damage. He does a lot of damage, and he doesn't like to die. And those are both very good things. However, when he pops his ultimate, he will jump around to random enemies, and if he doesn't kill one, like he could leave one on 1 HP and then not kill them, and then they'll heal back up, and it'll be basically like his ultimate did nothing, right? So it can be kind of hit or miss with him, and he definitely doesn't go through shields or anything. So I think that his damage is kind of suffering because of that, but as a fighter, you definitely want to be going dark or fire, and then probably chakra on that. Yeah.
I've been through countless trials like this.
I kind of hate Hercules. He can stay alive a little bit, but he does like not enough damage. He doesn't stay alive long enough, and as a tank, it just doesn't work. In my opinion, in my book, it just doesn't do it for me. Again, tank, you know, earth runes, shield, and that'll be that.
The unmatched warlord is again the victor.
Lubu is fine. I think he's kind of like a worse Susanoo, honestly. Like, he doesn't switch places, he doesn't get the stun off the rip, and he does like the same thing with his ultimate, like the same amount of damage, the same everything. He can be good. I've seen him be good, but most of the time it's kind of okay unless you invest a lot into him. And at that point, you have some better characters you could do anyway. But as a fighter, again, probably want to go fire and chakra. Chakra's almost entirely necessary on him as well, for the same reasons as Susanoo.
Fight harder. Protect something you treasure.
G and M. I used them as my main DPS throughout most of the game, leading up to this point, and I find them to be good. They're good. At this point in the game, they just don't do enough damage, right? Like they do extra damage to shields, which is sometimes useful against a team with like a Naga on it, but usually it's just not enough. Like they can release the ultimate twice, sure, but if they can't release it more than that, they can just get health back from that energy. They just don't do enough damage for me at this point in the game, and so I've replaced them with multiple other different characters. So, but as mages, again, fire or lightning would work well with them, and then a chakra is probably just the best option.
I will fear not. I was born to do this.
Joan of Arc just recently got changed through a patch. She's kind of, it says support here, but she's kind of a tank. She wants to make her allies invincible and buff them, which is good and nice, can definitely come in clutch. But again, it's kind of inconsistent. It really depends on where you put her on the team physically. And you can run her, and it's fine. If you do want to, probably water runes, and then I suppose a Magatama, probably. So very much the same as any other support.
Deus Levoth.
I will restore the power and prestige of Egypt.
Cleopatra. I've seen her do a lot of damage, like a lot of damage. But most of the time, she's just so easy to kill, right? Like I can just kill her, and then that's GG's, because that's like their DPS in their team, and it's just not enough. So most of the time, I don't see her doing much. She can, but there are other options that I think I'd recommend above her. But as a mage, again, probably fire, maybe dark, and then go for a chakra or the Axe of Pangu. Yeah.
Humans mean nothing in the eyes of the gods.
Cassandra, very good healer, specifically early game healer. If you can build her up anywhere between the early and mid game, she will do a lot for you. she increases that HP by so much for a brief period of time, and that can definitely come in clutch as well. At this point in the game, she's kind of okay. She lasts for a while after the battle ends, which is nice. Gives some damage reduction, but outside of that, it's not enough for me. Because there are 2 other healers that I rank above her. But if you do need 3 teams with 3 different healers, she is a good option. Her and Hela are kind of tied for that in my mind. But again, as a healer, as a support, you want water and you want the Magatama for sure.
Well, hello. Let's give them what for how abouts.
Archimedes is rough. So I've seen him do fine, but he's kind of just filler, honestly, in a team that is offense or defense. He's really just filler. Like, you don't have another character built up and you're using him in the meantime. Most of the time is what I see. I don't see him in very high level play most of the time unless you're trying to fill like 15 different slots. And again, just filler, right? So he can do damage, but he's just usually not enough in high level play like that. But again, as a fighter, probably want fire runes, probably want chakra or the axe of Pengu. Just kind of the way it goes with fighters. So,
Comrades, tonight we dine in Hades.
Leonidas, I remember when he was released, I was asking my Discord mates and my guild mates if he was good at all, if he was worth it, and they said he was. They gave me some information, said that he lasts for a good long while in a battle because as a tank he has a lot of defense. He does some damage with the ultimate, and he's just a good support for your team overall. But there are some other options that will last longer or keep your team alive longer. He's kind of more of a fighter than a healing kind of tank, so he's kind of like the opposite of Athena, right? But as a tank, again, you want earth runes, you want the shield.
There will be no rest until peace reigns.
YSS is another good tank. There again, I think there are better options, but if you're going to build him, you definitely can, and he will work all the way up to the late game. Like, he'll kind of just do the same thing throughout the entire game. He does some damage. He stays alive for quite a while. If you want to put him on a defensive team, he'll work quite well, I believe. And then as a tank, again, you probably want earth runes, probably want the shield. That's just how it is.
1,000 days and 1,000 fights.
Aladdin is probably the strangest character. Again, he's very new, and he gives buffs, and then he gives debuffs, and that's kind of it. Like, he dies quite easily, and there are other options where you can have multiple characters that do the same. So you can have multiple characters that altogether do the same thing that he does, except they also live for longer and help your team in a better fashion. So while he is kind of a one-man army when it comes to buffs and debuffs, he dies, that's kind of it. So as a support, you might want water runes, you might want light or something of the sort to keep him more alive longer, and then a Magatama probably, but yeah.
You're simply no match for me.
Nagakanya, literally possibly the best healer in the game. She gets the ultimate off. All of that health is going straight to all of your heroes. They're all getting shields based on how much they get healed. If they get healed more than their normal health, they will get a shield of the same amount. Like, she just does a lot. And if she can get that ultimate off multiple times, your team will not die. She refuses to let it happen. And I find that very, very good. Again, you definitely want water runes. You definitely want the Magatama so you can get that ultimate off as much as possible. And she's just a fantastic support.
Who doesn't like playing with me?
TNM is a good DPS. Not wonderful, not my favorite ever, but she definitely does her work. And as a Verdian, she is one of the only Verdian like real damage dealers. So she fills that void that other characters leave quite well. And I think the ultimate and her other abilities do enough damage to have her be competitively viable, at least at certain levels. As a mage, you kind of want to build her like a mage/fighter, so fire works quite well with her, funnily enough. And a chakra is good, an axe of Pengu is good. You can kind of decide.
I will shelter the weak.
Idun is my healer. She's mine. No one else take her. No. Idun is my healer that I use in my competitive team. She doesn't do quite as much health as Naga does because Naga recovers health based on percentage of max health, whereas Idun recovers health based on her attack. So it's kind of just a difference of that. Plus, Idun gives energy as well as healing at the same time. And that helps me get all my ults off really, really fast. And with the team that I build, it's kind of like a turbo ult team, which is great. And for that, she's very, very good. Probably the second best healer in the game, maybe the first. Kind of Naga and Idun are kind of interchangeable for most teams. And for the exact same reason as Naga, you want to put water runes and you want to put a Magatama on her to have her just be the best.
Destruction brings back purity.
I built Gaia. I did. I tried to make her work. I tried so hard. And she does 0 damage. Like, she does nothing. She stays alive for a long time, but she does absolutely nada in the way of DPS. And there are just better tanks, right? Like, you can just run better tanks, and because of that, I don't run her. I don't think anybody really should unless you're in the early games and you just want someone to stay alive. And if you want to do that, you definitely want to go Earth Runes and the Shield. It's just the best option.
Hello, my lord. I am ready at your service.
Oberon's good. He's fine. In the early game, he's better than in the late game. But he is one of the only other Verdian actually decent DPSs. And that's why I have him built up just recently. Because he does do similar damage to like Susanoo, except he's kind of safer. So he's pretty good. And he fills that void of, again, DPS in Verdian. As a fighter, you want to go fire or maybe dark. And then chakra, probably. You might want to go axe, depending on what you're using him for.
Some flowers attract bees, others everything.
Flora is very similar to Zeus. Very squishy until she gets her ult off. When the ult does go off, she can kill some people, which can be very good depending on what you're trying to do. Usually, I don't see people at my level running her. That's just because there are better options. Everyone has access to everything that late in the game, you know. But you can definitely build her anytime before like level 350, and she'll do work for you. As a mage, you probably want to go fire, maybe dark, same thing. And then chakra, again, kind of mandatory for her.
My borders no longer end at the shoreline.
Poseidon is a good tank. He stays alive for quite a while. He doesn't do that much damage, but when you pair him with people who do damage, he can lock them in place, stun them, and then have them kind of just sit there until another ally's ultimate goes off, and then just kills them, right? So he stays alive for a long time. He can, with the right timing, do wonders for you, and that makes him a good tank. As a tank, again, you definitely want Earth Runes, you definitely want that shield. Moving on.
Who dares challenge me?
Freya's an interesting one. She does a lot of damage over time, which is kind of difficult to gauge in this game. Because she's the only character that does it, at least in the way that she does. Like, she finishes the attack and then it continues to do tick damage afterward. But I saw a replay of her doing boatloads of damage to a boss, and I think that's kind of where she's going to shine overall. As a character in your normal like defense team, I don't think she's good enough. Offensively, she can work. You can make her work. I've seen her work at my level. But there are just better options most of the time, and so that's why I don't run her, and I don't have her built up at all. But as a fighter, again, fire, maybe dark, maybe lightning, runes, and then chakra or an axe or something of the sort for equipment.
Sweat more in training, bleed less in battle.
Chiron. I don't really know. Like, he stays alive for a while. He makes copies of himself, but the copies don't really do anything. And his damage is kind of mediocre from what I've seen, from what I've fought against, from what I've... Yeah. again, just better options. And since he's kind of newer, not as many people have him built up either. But as a fighter, again, seeing as he's kind of a defensive fighter, you want to go either earth, fire, lightning, or something either defensive or offensive, or a mix of both. You definitely want to you probably don't want to put a chakra on him. You might want to put a Magatama, and then perhaps an axe or a shield, depending on which build you're trying to go for, or if you want to do a hybrid.
A pinch of fairy dust.
Titania, again, very new character. She gets that ultimate off constantly. Like she just spams her abilities left, right, and center until something happens. But she dies fast. And if she dies in the middle of this combo of just a flurry of different abilities, it's not doing anything. I haven't seen her like in any sort of high level play. But maybe people haven't been trying her out enough. You know, people have said she's good. I mean, she's fine. You can build her at a lower state in the game, and she'll probably do just fine for you. But yeah, as a mage, I guess it kind of depends. You probably want to go fire, and then like an axe. Probably not a chakra. Her ultimate is not necessarily the main source of damage. So
Protect the beauty of this world.
that was it. That was every single SSR and every single UR character in the game, and my thoughts on them. If anybody has any questions, any comments, anything, feel free to list them down in the comments below. If you feel like I'm a complete wackadoo and a dunce and I don't know what I'm talking about, say that as well. And if you guys want to see anything else, anything in particular, feel free to mention that as well. But yeah, those are my thoughts, comments, feelings on all of these characters. Hope you guys all enjoyed, and I will see you the next time I do one of these.